Masirase Muria, Zimbabwe, and thank you for joining us on Nehanda TV. Today we are honored to have the President of the Movement for Democratic Change, Dr. Morgan Tsvangirai. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lance.
July 31 is done and dusted. Do you have any regrets about participating in that election, given that you had no access to the voters' roll, among other complications?
This was a very complex contest. I don't regard that as an election. An election is a process whereby the mandate of the people is expressed freely. But far from it, this was a militarized operation. And the choice was not optional to Zimbabweans. It was a defend power project by Mugabe and his military operation. So at the end of the day, it didn't matter whether the MDC participated or not. This was a predetermined outcome.
The South African papers ran stories alleging that SADC were prepared to support you if you had boycotted this particular election, and that you did not.
Far from it. SADC resolution in Maputo was very clear. Let's have reforms first before the elections. But you know what? Mugabe threatened to pull out of SADC if SADC was not going to go along with him. So what they did as SADC was to protect Mugabe's position. They were all cowed to accept Mugabe's position, regardless of everything. After all, they were the guarantors. Why didn't they insist that unless certain conditions are fulfilled to the satisfaction of SADC, then they were not going to endorse it? That's all they needed to do. That's all the leverage they had. But they chose not to exercise that option.
But a boycott by you in 2008 kind of forced a coalition government. So a lot of people were banking on you using similar leverage.
The momentum lines that had been built gave us no option. Can you imagine on that Monday on our last, even if we knew some of the machinations, if I had stood up and say we are pulling out of this election, there would have been an outcry. I would have been accused of selling out, because the momentum that the nation had built was very confident of victory. But it was a victory that already ZANU-PF knew they would not achieve.
Now, when the results were announced, there was a lot of anger countrywide. Some are accusing you of not cultivating that anger and giving an appropriate response to the situation.
No, we exercised leadership. The leadership we exercised was that ZANU-PF was ready, because they had already prepared for the outcome. They were prepared for a reaction to that outcome. And it would have been careless and reckless on our part to follow in the trap. What we then did was that you cannot act emotionally to the loss, because what we want is a sustainable struggle. What we want is conviction. And conviction was the only way in which people can sustain their struggle, rather than to face an enemy who is already prepared for you to crush you, and that would have been the end.
Several options were available for you on the table. You first sought the legal route,
yes,
and made a U-turn.
No, we didn't.
Midway.
We didn't, Lance. We did not. We did. Our withdrawal was strategic. We had gone to court, remember, to seek a court injunction for ZEC to supply us with the relevant information. And the court did not make a judgment. It stayed judgment indefinitely. So it meant that while the Constitutional Court, which Mugabe had appointed 2 weeks before the election, was ready for that petition, and in fact they were very clear, there was no way we were going to get any fair judgment in the face of the fact that we didn't have the relevant information supplied by ZEC. So what we did was that, okay, if that is the case, if ZEC is not prepared to give us the relevant information, which by the way, by law, they are supposed to announce, then there was no need for us to go to court. So we withdrew it.
Some would have said you knew the odds were stacked against you. The judiciary is stacked with Mugabe appointees. Why sleepwalk into an arena where
I don't know. I'm a person who believes in the rule of law. I believe in the judiciary that it will exercise its judgment fairly. I believe that. But unfortunately, there has been a lot of compromise on the judiciary. The Constitutional Court was staked with people, yes, but without the facts, as announced by law, by ZEC, there was no way we will go before a court without the relevant facts, especially relevant to the fact that they announced the results do not constitute the 100%.